if men and women are equal in all things, then why do we see men wearing no shirts outside, but we don't see women wearing no shirts outside?
Mm-hmm.
And if that movement continues in the direction that it's headed towards full equality, then are we at some point going to see where it's very culturally accepted for women to just be walking around topless?
Modesty is not set in stone for all situations. Like there's an appropriateness depending on what situation you're in. Can I have my clothes off when I'm showering? Yes. Like if I was at church naked, that would be not appropriate. Because it's not appropriate in one place doesn't mean it can't be appropriate in another.
I guess I started questioning what I'd been taught about modesty and how I viewed modesty. And this is something that I think we do in all aspects of the gospel. Like you have a child's idea of what this principle is, and then at some point you have to really own it. And you realize that there are parts of my understanding of this that I've not owned because they've never quite jived in my mind or my heart. And you have to wrestle with it in order to come to your peaceful understanding of like, yeah, this is what it really means. If that's a world that we might be headed towards, then how do I teach modesty in that world? And how do I prepare my youth for that? Welcome to the No Bushel Podcast. I am Big Ben, and this is the Burning Bushman, here with another conversation for you.
Let's get into it. Today is a little bit of a spin-off, but kind of continuation, I think, of some of our conversation from last week. We talked a little bit about the garments and some of cultural shifts in the church and whatnot. But as we were talking about garments, we talked a little bit about kind of modesty and were the garments modest? Were they not modest? And was that the purpose of the garment? And that led us into some other conversations. But today we want to hone in more on just a general principle of modesty, what that looks like for you, for us, and maybe what the purpose is behind modesty as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So if this is the type of thing you like, please like and subscribe, share with your friends. We believe in sharing our open thoughts and ideas, which at times is a little bit uncomfortable. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to help us all feel a little bit more comfortable speaking what we often don't speak. We want to be brave. We want to be okay with not always getting it right, and to own our thoughts and to own our decisions, to take full accountability and agency for the choices we make. We can all have disagreements, and we want to be okay having disagreements. And so as you listen, you might totally disagree with some of the things that Kendall and I will talk about today. We might strike a vein with you. Either way, we hope that it makes you think and makes you evaluate the role that modesty plays in your life, whether it's a good, healthy role, or whether it's not so healthy of a role in your life. And so with that, this is kind of personal for me. I have to admit, I have spent a lot of time studying the principle of modesty. I feel like a couple of culminating events that led me to really, really think about this for the last few years. And my view on modesty over the last few years has drastically shifted. I grew up in a very normal LDS home in mostly the 90s as a kid. And so, guidance from the church and for Strength of Youth was very much pretty clear guidelines. Yeah. Knee-length shorts or at least close to knee-length shorts. And honestly, for men, there wasn't a whole lot of other guidance. I didn't really feel like...
it was more grooming than dress for guys.
You want to look nice.
Trim your beard.
And so a lot of modesty was kind of delegated to women. And, I feel like teachers would always say, modesty is more than just what you wear. But pretty much it just kind of boiled down. And maybe this was just my immature mind, but it just kind of boiled down to what women wear.
I think there's a truth to that for sure. Oftentimes I kind of forgot about that sentiment, but frequently I remember hearing that growing up. Like, it's not just what you wear, but where your mind is and what you're thinking of. And
and for young men, I feel like women often had the modesty talks. Men, I don't know that we had modesty talks as much as maybe pornography talks and don't view women in inappropriate ways type talks maybe.
Yeah.
Although I don't remember too many of those talks personally.
Well, those talks are uncomfortable and weird, so it's hard. Yeah.
Just
those are the talks that
burned them from our memories because they were.
Try not to have those conversations as
when
much as
you're a young
possible.
man and you're like, what are you guys talking about? Anyway, in recent years, I have currently I have 6 daughters. Thank you. I almost forgot. They keep adding on. And
you didn't name them, so we don't know which one you forgot.
So I have 6 daughters, and my oldest daughter is now 13. And so as I just came to the realization, I was like, I have a lot of girls. I grew up in a family of boys. I have one sister, but she was the oldest. She was out of the house by the time I was like 6 years old. And so it was like, I'm supposed to be the patriarch leading my family, and I should have some like prescriptive rules for my family as far as what we as a family do for modesty. You know, like how do our girls dress, and what do we teach is appropriate and not appropriate. And as I started thinking about that, I kind of had a couple of conflicting thoughts. One, I had kind of sensed that within the church leadership, like I guess I saw a couple of things, even from like the General Young Women's Presidency, and where there seemed to be much less emphasis on forcing modesty and a lot more on accommodating, like helping people feel comfortable. And you know, if a young woman shows up, I think this was, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was basically someone had asked the General Young Women Presidency, like, what do we do when a young woman comes to a swimming activity in a bikini, or comes to a, you know, like what? And she's just kind of, it's like, love her and let her come, and you know, like just like don't even worry about that aspect of things.
I think one of the issues with the culture of modesty is the judgmental side of it. If you dress different than what the norm is, that unfortunately there is a culture of judgment in the church, and I think that while men and women do it, both genders do it, I think that it does hit a little harder on the female side. There tends to be, I mean, stereotypically there's more gossip and whatnot, and guys don't care about what each other wear as much. So, but I think that there's a little bit more judgment that can go on, which is very negative. And hopefully what we're talking about today is going to help kind of maybe shed a light on how we can not be so judgmental and not feel so judged, and be more comfortable in ourselves and open in what we wear and what others wear, and not feel like we have to follow the rule book. While we still need to follow the guide, you know, what God wants us to do. The policies instilled in the church are not necessarily important compared as it is to the doctrines that lie behind it.
And I think that's what I was coming to, was this idea that we were given these applications that, to me, I had never internalized. What are the doctrines associated, like the key core principles that govern modesty?
Yeah.
And how can I internalize those and help my youth internalize those in a world that is becoming ever more secularized, for good and for bad? Okay, there are movements that, okay, so this is kind of a strange thought, okay, but just a thought experiment for you, okay?
Okay.
And that is, gender equality has kind of been a big thing, and treating men and women equally. And at one point, I had this thought. It was as I was thinking about these types of things, and it's really kind of I'm not saying that this thought is true or that it will ever happen, but it could, and it kind of makes you think of this question just a little bit differently. And the thought that I had that really struck a chord with me for some reason was, if men and women are equal in all things, then why can a man, you know, why do we see men wearing, you know, no shirts outside, but we don't see women wearing no shirts outside? And if that movement continues in the direction that it's headed towards full equality, then are we at some point going to see where it's very culturally accepted for women to just be walking around topless?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And you actually see this in other cultures too. I mean, there are places in other parts of the world where nudity is much more normalized. Okay, and so then that just made me think, like, okay, if that's a world that we might be headed towards, then how do I teach modesty in that world? And how do I prepare my youth for that? And so there's so many things that I've thought about with this. I'm kind of having trouble distilling all of the different various aspects of it. But so I wanted principles that could adapt across time and society. Already, we've seen that modesty does, like, appropriateness. Like, I think of modesty as like what is appropriate for a situation and what is humble and seeking to glorify God rather than self. Those are kind of like core principles that I see with modesty. And another aspect here that I saw frequently that kind of like made me question, I guess I started questioning what I'd been taught about modesty and how I viewed modesty. And this is something that I think we do in all aspects of all aspects of the gospel. Like you have a child's idea of what this principle is, and then at some point you have to really own it. And you realize that there are parts of my understanding of this that I've not owned because they've never quite jived in my mind or my heart. And you have to wrestle with it in order to come to your peaceful understanding of like, yeah, this is what it really means. And one of the things that I remember, and in my family, I had a family member a female who I believed had a lot of body shame, where it was talked about as modesty. It's like, I don't want to show anything. I'm not even going to wear a swimsuit ever. Mm-hmm. But deep down, my little kid mind, like at some level, understood that you're saying modesty, but I think you're actually meaning you're just not proud of your body, or you're not comfortable in your body, and you feel some shame about your body, and thus you cover it. And the long-term, church culture is an interesting thing, because for years and years and years, we're told, okay, this is how you should dress, or this is how you should dress. And initially, a lot of these things that we're told by the church, I think they start from very good places. Yeah. And it's good to have some prescriptive ideas thrown out sometimes. But then once that lingers for long enough, it leads to what you talked about, kind of a judgmental society, as well as excessive privacy, maybe, that leads to people to what once started out as, we should do this to honor our bodies in God, turns into I'm ashamed to show my body, and if my body is ever seen by anybody, including maybe my future husband or spouse, then I'm going to feel very awkward about that, and it's not going to be a good thing, right? Yeah. And the idea that we always talk about modesty as in like being more modest, but I actually think that there is, so like we think of a continuum when we think of like immodest and modest as the two sides of the continuum. And I actually think that modesty is in the middle of the continuum. I think at the other side is prudishness, or I don't know if you have another word for.
I was just going to ask you what you thought the word would be. That's probably appropriate for.
Where there's excessive privacy. And this kind of stems, so I think multiple cultural events led to a society that is extremely private with our bodies. And I think that to some degree that can be harmful. So when I went to the MTC, it was different than when you went to the MTC. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Because you're old.
And in the shower room at the MTC, I'm sure you were told what the shower room was. Do you know what the name of what I'm talking about is?
Was there a name?
We called it the Tree of Life.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about, the Tree of Life? And they had basically 4 shower heads all coming up one pipe, and then there were 4 shower heads off of it. And so you would shower next to 4 other people, and there were no stalls, there were no, it was just out in the open. Yeah. And the older generation, they totally understand that, this is just like a normal.
It's not a big deal.
It was a normal thing. It was no big deal. And most public showers were that way. I mean, even when I was in high school, we didn't have private showers. I think a lot of high schools still don't, but nobody ever showers in high schools anymore, right?
Yeah, I know in my high school for basketball, it was just one big open room. All the shower heads were lined around the wall, and if you wanted to shower, you did. But even in college, at the RB, that was where I showered frequently after, intramural basketball or whatever, and it had the Tree of Life type shower head. And for those that are used to it or know what it is, it's not a big deal. But if you walk in for the first time thinking I'm gonna go shower, and then you've never showered like that before, it's a little shocking when you see 5 other dudes just butt naked taking a shower.
You want to turn on the fan in here? I think it'll be okay on the audio. We're sorry if you get it's getting a little bit warm in here, so we're gonna turn on our fan.
We're gonna need to go hit the shower after.
Anyway, so around the same time period and it may be part of why privacy became a bigger thing, is actually the sexualized nature of content that was putting out. So pornography went online, was parents all super concerned about their kids getting involved in pornography and the sexualization of everything. And so I feel like where there used to be a delineation between what was sexual and what was the natural body in appropriate ways, even in the nude. You can go back to classic art, right? I actually love some of the old classic art that, like David. It was a classic statue of a naked David. And it's was that designed to be sexual? Is being in a men's bathroom, showering with other men naked, a sexual thing? Is I know my older brother served a mission in Korea, and I think a lot of places have these, but like they have public bathhouses, and like you just go in, and he remembers going in, and he said it was kind of weird when my mission president came in naked, and he was like, it's like, okay, like there was a place for being intimate at the level of nudity, but not sexualized or even wrong.
And that's where I think what you said earlier makes a difference, is modesty is not set in stone for all situations. Like there's an appropriateness depending on what situation you're in. Can I have my clothes off when I'm showering? Yes. Like if I was at church naked, that would be very immodest and not appropriate. But because it's not appropriate in one place doesn't mean it can't be appropriate in another. And so we have to make sure that we leave room for those situations, but also understanding the delicacy of what modesty is, and not everybody has the same interpretation of that, which I think is an important thing to at least mention, is that we do all have our own individual interpretations of what we feel is modest. Some of that is influenced by what we feel comfortable in our own skin, like you mentioned, with whether you have body shame or you feel, maybe you're super jacked and want to show off everything you've got, and you've got the perfect, quote unquote, perfect body. But there again, we always come back to this. But what's the purpose of what you're wearing and doing? And you may question, like, what's the purpose of me putting, like, did I have a purpose in putting my shirt on today? Like, I needed a shirt to go to work, and it needed to be business shirt that would be appropriate for there. But like, was I thinking, is this a modest shirt or not? No, part of that's just because it's become what I am used to wearing, and just like my go-to, right? But
another example here of public nudity, if you will, that in our culture is very inappropriate would be something like breastfeeding, right? So this is something it's as natural as it comes, okay?
Right.
And it's something that's very good for babies and mothers. And, our culture is very much focused on not making anybody comfortable. I think that's where a lot of stems is. But I kind of think it stems a little bit from the hypersexualization of things. We just, like, everything became so hypersexualized that we're like, okay, we're just going to shut off the body altogether.
Yeah, I agree. Everything has been overly sexualized. I mean, you look online, anything you've got, your models that are just putting, I want to order a new pair of shoes online, and it's like they get the most sexual looking figure model for men or women's clothing, which I get it. Like, I understand that helps move product, but it is definitely over the top.
And so, in my opinion, there was a period of time when modesty became over-applied to a point that I think that there were some negative consequences. We've talked about some of them, some of the body shame. Also from, an understanding for young men, right? So, like, most young men at some point deal with pornography. But the idea that, okay, you can be attracted to something, and then there's pornography. And, like, the boundary of, like, what is appropriate attraction and what is not appropriate attraction, right? Like, that becomes... I remember being a young man, and this was something I struggled with, that I think to some degree was borne out because of the strictness of modesty that I had in my view, was that I remember going on my mission. At the beginning of my mission, it was like I was on a college campus, right? And you'd have college girls out suntanning, and we'd be out knocking doors around, right? And I remember at the beginning of my mission, it was very clear. It's like, someone's in a bikini, I am walking the opposite direction, going around the block. Like, I'm not going to go anywhere near that, which was actually objectifying the body just as much as sexuality. I couldn't parse out, I was not good at parsing out attraction from sexuality and person from object. And those are really important distinctions, I believe, to make. I had a very unhealthy view of that, and it actually caused me to struggle more with pornography when I was younger than I think I needed to, if I had had a proper idea. And once again, like, we all mature and develop in different ways. But I kind of made the switch where halfway through my mission, rather than running away from those situations, I consciously told myself, that's a daughter of God. She's a person that needs the gospel just as much as anybody else. And I can be man enough to have a conversation and look at her and say, you are a human being, you are a person, and yeah, you're attractive. And that's not bad that you're attractive. And maybe you shouldn't be wearing that out here, but that doesn't mean that I should treat you as a body. I'm still going to treat you as a human being.
Right.
And for me, that was a very healthy shift in my mentality around women. I do believe, so a lot of women struggle with sexuality when they first get married. Their whole life is, if you live a very prudish life where you can't show or share any physical intimacy at all, then to go from that to, 180 degrees,
having all of it,
having everything.
Yeah.
A lot of women really struggle. And in my marriage, it was no different. For my wife to be truly intimate and be sexually fulfilled, it actually took many, many years before we felt like that mentally she was able to let go, I guess, if you will, enough to get there. And so all of these things kind of like, as I said, I have all of these different things in my mind that just made me question, like, okay, are we teaching modesty the best way? And how should it be taught moving forward?
Well, and for you, you've got, at this point, I've got 2 daughters too, so this totally applies to what I'm going to be worried about here. I mean, mine are, I don't have a 13-year-old yet, so I've got a few years before I have to really worry about it. But still, I mean, this is the time to be teaching those principles so that when they are old enough, they're ready to make those decisions on their own. So I think what you're articulating and what I think both of us are concerned about for our daughters and for the youth of today in general, what do we teach our daughters is modest? How do we teach that? And is one thing that I question is what I'm teaching them the same thing that I apply to myself, if that makes sense, or what my wife would apply for herself. And that is a question that I've realized I probably need to change my mentality of what modesty is to me or to my kids.
So I saw all of these points in my life where I was like just questioning modesty. And then I was like, okay, I should go to the scriptures. What do the scriptures really say about modesty? And they don't say much.
There's not a lot. There really isn't.
And if you're looking for prescriptive modesty, you're not going to find. Okay, I will say there might be 1 or 2 scriptures in Paul. Paul, I mean, like you could try to make the argument that women covering their hair and like this is why Mennonites and Amish wear head coverings and whatnot, right? Like there's a few things there. Most of those people believe they're speaking about certain religious practices that they did when they were worshiping together, that they were wearing those, and so there's very little actual prescriptive discussion there. And as far as what we teach, so if you get online and you look at the gospel questions section of LDS.org, sorry, not LDS.org, churchofjesuschrist.org. Mistake on my part there.
I think my browser history still has it as LDS.org.
Yeah, well, it's so much easier to type LDS. Yeah, I know.
And it just automatically pulls it up.
This is a total side note, but
sorry, I'm a sinner.
With the emphasis on it, I've like actually consciously tried to do CHUR for church, and it's such a hassle. But I still type church, and then it comes up with Church of Jesus Christ. So, strangely enough, in the modesty section, the first thing it talks about is not modesty in clothing, which kind of goes back to how I feel like the church has changed its tune in how it's teaching about modesty. But I feel like my generation has not caught up to the revised way that the church is teaching it. And I feel like there's a lot in my generation that are still struggling to find. And you might be young enough where you don't deal with that struggle as much because maybe you were taught in a slightly different way. But the first thing it talks about is actually that modesty is about humility and decency, showing glory to God and not to self. And it first starts with talking about behavior and language.
Okay.
And how we can be modest in our behavior and language. Now, so what I wanted to do here is kind of relay. So you've heard the term when someone is like being prideful and speaking of like, oh, you should be more modest, right? Which is another way that the word can be applied. Even that, I feel like was taken to an extreme when I was a kid, where it was like, you don't talk about yourself, or you don't you don't want to put yourself out there or self-promote.
Yeah.
And I remember as I got older, at some point there was like this conscious feeling like, okay, we should share our talents and we should be confident in our abilities. Like that difference between humbly not saying anything about you versus putting yourself out there and still being humble about who you are, but being willing to share who you are to glorify God. And I think God wants us to use our talents and our gifts and things to help the world. But if you were taught to be overly modest, you might not share anything about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't share anything about yourself, it's really hard to get to know people. You have to put yourself out there a little bit in order to make friends, connections, and whatnot. And so it's about relationships and intimacy. And when I say intimacy, not just sexual intimacy, but just connecting with people.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of those same principles, if you take that modesty in that realm too strictly, you're going to have some negative outcomes in your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the same thing applies if you are overly modest in dress and prudish about how and when your body shows, that can actually be harming to relationships as well.
Sure.
Future relationships and even current relationships. And getting to know people of the opposite sex, getting to know people of the same sex, and having connection points that are not sexual in nature, but that are still intimate.
Right.
So even, if you're overly prudish, like, I remember being a young man and having, like a grandma or, a church member who just grabs your head and pulls you into their chest and holds you tight, right? And you're like, is this okay?
It's just awkward on all levels, no matter if you're prude or not.
But the idea being like physical touch, we should be appropriate in some of those situations, and we can take it too far.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is just what I'm saying with that.
So one thing that I worry about maybe worry about's not the right word. Like, how do you get out of, if you're on one end of the spectrum, I think it's easier on one end to come to the middle than it is the other. So if you're overly sexualized, everything, I think it's easier to come closer to that modest section, because you can change your perspective to having more of an appreciation for the body and having more respect, and whether it's clothing or your language or whatnot, you can. But I think it is probably harder on the more, what we're calling the prudish side, to shift to being open to sharing those parts of you, that your body more, or your, because one end feels like you're going from a bad to good situation if you have that mindset shift, whereas on the other end it almost feels like I'm already doing what's good, and what I'm shifting into is now a bad thing, but I'm trying to make it feel like it's a good. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I think that people have a really hard time with that, and it's not to say that you can't stay the way you are and be totally happy. Like that's okay. But I think that understanding that spectrum brings a whole bigger perspective that there really can be more fulfilling if you understand it. Yeah.
And which brings me, I think, to in my journey of where I've been more recently, and that is that I've sensed all these things, and I've felt this pull to advocate, if you will. I don't know if advocate's the right word, but to advocate for less strictness in modesty, which feels wrong.
Yeah.
I think, which is what you're saying, right? And I've still kind of struggled with okay, I'm scripturally, I feel like I'm striving to apply the principles. I'm doing all these things that I think are good, and yet I'm being less strict in this application. And by advocating for that, am I making other people less righteous by advocating for that? Right.
Well, and the part of the struggle, and we've talked about this before in the past, is, for instance, I think generally speaking, modesty in the church right now, you'd say a bikini is not modest. I think that has shifted quite a bit. Up until just a few years ago, I think that's been stereotypically the case. And if I told my wife, we're going to go to the lake and you're going to wear a bikini, I want you to wear a bikini, and your family's going to be there, there's no way that would happen, because she's not comfortable with that. And for her, that's not modest. Am I trying to tell her to wear a bikini because it's modest and it's okay, or is it just because I want to be able to see my wife more, right? And I think that when we're having this conversation of shifting from one end of the spectrum or the other, it's important to not do the pendulum swing, as we've talked about multiple times on our podcast, of going too far in the opposite direction. So going from, I'm not going to show anything in my body at all, to I'm going to swing all the way to the other side and I'm going to wear a bikini next time I go to the pool. I think can be quite uncomfortable and probably too far of a shift for certain individuals. And the same can be the other way around, right? And so that's something that I think I internally have struggled with is, what do I teach? I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I think most men would want to have their wife wear less clothing. But then we also have to remember, what are the principles of modesty? And I don't want her to feel uncomfortable. I want her to be, proud of her body, but also be, feel that she is glorifying God. And if that means that she covers up a little bit more, great. If that means that she's okay with, showing a little bit more skin, that's great too. I think we have to make sure that we're honing in on the principle that, like you've talked about, and not just our
manly desires.
So, or womanly desires.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to this, but maybe part of our issue is, so you made a comment that was, I think most men would want to see their wives wear more or have more skin show, right? And I think in our generation, that's very likely true. Mm-hmm. But is that true in the older generation? Because I kind of feel like men were the arbiters. I mean, like if you go to like your Muslim countries where modesty is like extreme, like who is actually enforcing that?
Right.
It's men. Mm. I feel like in maybe I'm wrong on that. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't know.
That's true.
And so is it a shift in the culture of what men, I don't know.
No, that's a good point. I mean, why do men, and I think this speaks to a part of why modesty, like you were talking about at the beginning, has kind of stemmed, at one point felt like it was more for women than for men, which I think is part of why a lot of women have had problems with modesty, like just wanting to go against the grain for modesty, because it almost feels like men are telling them what to do or what not to do, rather than feeling like it's just what is right or wrong. I think that stems from maybe a feeling of a man-made rule rather mm-hmm. than what the main purpose is behind it.
So one of the biggest questions is my wife and I have been navigating, like, okay, what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and for both of us. So like I've started working out with my shirt off, and this has been within the last year, and I normally work out in my basement, and I come up and I'm all sweaty, so I don't put my shirt back on until I kind of cool it off a little mm-hmm. bit. And when I first started doing that, it was always funny when I come up, because my little kids would be like, "Dad, you're naked. Why are your shirt off?" You know what I mean? And they're used to it now, so it's like it's just been normalized.
Yeah.
Same thing when my wife, with the changing garment styles, has worn some sleeveless clothing, and her biggest question is like, that it's still that feeling of like, well, I'm doing something countercultural, and am I okay with my daughters doing this? Like, right? Like, because you want to set the example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be what you are that way. And I tend to think that we are way over worried about it. Does that make sense?
I agree.
Like, I think we need to let people make their own choices, and as men, we need to view women as women, daughters of God, not as objects. But that can go whether they're wearing a lot of clothes or not a lot of clothes. And I just think that we're all overly stressed about it. At least I
agree.
have been.
Well, in our last episode, as we were talking about garments, we kind of brought this up. Like, it doesn't matter what somebody else is wearing. Like, what we talked about in the episode was that if we see someone in the church that's wearing a tank top, then we start, like, we have a little bit of a judgment automatically, almost, of like, oh, you're not wearing your garments, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. But we see our neighbor across the street mowing his yard with no shirt, which is the case for me most of the time. Mm-hmm. Or so and so shows up at the party with the tank top. Like, we don't think twice about it. So I mean, now that's a very specific religious thing, going from garments to no garments or whatever. But I think it applies to our conversation as well with modesty. It's just like, we really don't, we need to stop worrying so much about other people, everybody mm-hmm. else, and just worry about yourself.
Yeah. And the intentions within your own heart of what, and this is actually something that the gospel topics, as I said on modesty, is what sign do you want to give to God?
Yeah.
In respect to your appearance, in respect to your language, in respect to your behaviors. That I feel like maybe when I was a kid anyway, a lot of the discussion around modesty was like, you should cover yourself so that other people don't have bad thoughts about you.
Right.
And I just don't think that's a healthy way to
I agree. And
portray it.
those people are going to have unhealthy thoughts one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, maybe you might push them in one direction or not, the less you wear. But I think those people that are already inclined to having impure thoughts are going to find a way to have impure thoughts no matter what you do or say or wear.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you don't have any boundaries. I think that
Right.
we do want to have boundaries. And being okay that different people are going to have different boundaries, but just being sure that the intention behind it is appropriate. And for those who are leaning towards the prudish side of things and feeling like they can't leave that, ask yourself, because you might just be perfectly modest in the best of ways. Okay, you might be very comfortable that way. You might be striving to honor God in that way, but it might also be a form of body shame, where you're just uncomfortable in your skin in the presence of others, that it's too intimate for you to show because you're so worried about what you would look like. And there's this balance, like humble confidence, right? Like not pride, but humble confidence in our bodies. So like the body positivity movement.
Okay, so yeah,
there's pros and cons here.
I was just about to say there's. Go ahead and make your point. We'll see.
Well, I there's a lot of things that I like about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I think it's really good. I think there can come a point where the body positivity movement pushes towards like unhealthy stuff is good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to be careful of that. Like we want to treat our bodies like temples, but we should also be body positive. And if we are feeling shame about our body, why are we feeling shame about our body?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do to change that view? Is it connecting more with God? And is it changing the way we eat? Is it exercising more? Like these are good things that can help us be more confident and grateful to God for our bodies. That's like gratitude for our bodies and the blessing that they are. And we know that like the doctrine of the church regarding the body is powerful. And the role. I mean, most other faiths don't believe at least a lot, don't believe in a bodily resurrection.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of crazy. Like they think the body is purely carnal and sinful and that there's no long-term game for the body. It's just the spirit somehow goes on after. I don't understand how that doctrines that don't believe in bodily resurrection occur. Anyway, just there's aspects of the body positivity movement I think are good, but they can be taken too far.
It's great for people to feel comfortable in their own skin, and in that, I think that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
We want self-confidence is good, but it should not promote unhealthy confidence that is not rooted in reality.
Yeah.
Maybe I should put it that way.
Yeah.
Is that a nice way of putting it?
It's a great way of putting it. So I was feeling a little bit this idea that modesty is kind of in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and that there are two extremes, but that most of us, I think, generally thought that modesty was on one side, and so we're just trying to be ever more modest. And I think that's been what's helped me the most to understand and feel better about being less strict in certain ways. And even because as I said, like to some degree, I've based on my understanding of these principles now, I've kind of wanted to help others feel more okay in their skin. And because of that, I go back and forth. You know, like there are things that I still feel uncomfortable doing because it's just not, you know, like when I first started working out without my shirt on, like that was kind of uncomfortable for me, right? Mm-hmm. And if I go outside without my shirt on, I still feel a little bit uncomfortable about that. You know, like it's just like it's something I'm working through, and I'm trying to learn for me what's an appropriate level of modesty and what is not. And so as we're all striving to learn that, like we might have different views, and that's where we should just worry less about that.
And I think that speaks to maybe a very important point that I want to emphasize in today's conversation is that this looks different for everybody. We can have kind of some generalities that can help form what society sees and thinks, but each individual person is going to have their own comfort level and their own perception of what it is. And it's important to remember that. And because of that, we need to make sure that we're not judgmental of ourselves and of those that are around us, and be more kind and respectful and open to what others think and feel. I think that's really what comes down to for me is I need to stop being so worried about other people and what they think of me, and stop worrying about other people and what I think of them. Just worry about me.
When I grew up, it was very, very common, whether it was my parents, whether it was leaders or whatnot, like if you were somewhere with them and they saw someone that was immodest, it was quite common for that to get called out.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, that person needs to cover up. That person is immodest, right? Like, and I think that was a very negative thing for me growing up. That's been one of the things, in how we've decided to teach our girls and my sons about proper modesty. That's one of the things we've tried to emulate, is that honestly, we don't talk about it. And when I say we don't talk about it, so this was my initial question when I first started this last couple of year study about this. I felt like, okay, I'm a patriarch of my family. I probably need to have prescriptive rules for my family. And what me and my wife have come to the conclusion is that no, actually, we don't want prescriptive rules. We ourselves as parents want to model what we believe is appropriate.
Yep.
And if our children at any point do something that we feel like is out of the realm of modesty, rather than calling them out in public or like making them feel bad, my plan, this has not been an issue yet, but my plan is to go on a walk with them or do something with them, wearing whatever it is that, that maybe is on the edge of comfort, and just having a conversation with, like, how do you feel? Like, are you feeling comfortable in your skin? Are you feeling like, is this something that you feel like is making you worry too much about what others think, or that the spirit is not there? Like, just having that open conversation. As long as you have a close conversation with your kids, I think you can openly have those types of conversations.
Yeah.
And guide. I don't, at least in the realm of modesty, I'm, sometimes for little kids, like maybe not little kids, but like there are some things where I'm like, go change and whatnot. But
yeah,
especially for teenage aged daughters, that's kind of what we've landed on as far as how we're going to be.
Well, and for those your younger kids, I think that's more on you as a parent, because you would have provided them with those clothes.
Exactly. So. That's when they're wearing their next younger siblings' clothes or something, and you're like,
the belly's poking out.
It's time to change.
5 sizes too short. Well, hopefully we've given some food for thought for our viewers here.
Yeah.
I think it's just been a good conversation to kind of go through some thought-provoking exercises. And for you as our viewers, we hope that we don't come across as judgmental, but more open-minded. And we're not perfect. I certainly am not, and I still struggle with a lot of these things. And so I hope that as we discuss, modesty and culture changes and the whole 9 yards, I hope that you can come away from this conversation with maybe just a more willing heart and open mind to being kind and respectful to those that are around you. Strive with us to be a little less judgmental. Just be more comfortable in your own skin. If you're not, then you have the power to do something about it. And that's another important lesson I think I've taken away from today's conversation is, if you're not comfortable, you can change. You can change whatever that is. On whatever end of the spectrum you're at, you have the power to change your life in ways that are good.
And maybe you're uncomfortable because you're truly being immodest and you need to cover up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because you're feeling some shame. And those are opposite sides of the spectrum. But anyway, give it some thought and tell us what you think and where you disagree or agree. Until next time.
This is the No Bushel Podcast.